So we were doing the verse number, the previous verse number, which is verse number 11th, and then we'll go to the verse number 12th. And the verse number 11th of the Shiva Sutra, which described the person who has arrived at that level of realization where he is no more a victim. The way we pass through different stages of consciousness, like the waking state, the sleep state, and the deep sleep state. Therefore, he's saying Tritaya Bhukta Vireshaha. And that word Vira, that is sort of referred to the Indriyas, but there is also a more mystical meaning of it. But essentially, he is being referred to as a master of the states and the master of the senses. Because generally, whatever experience we pass through, we undertake or undergo during these three states have a lot to do with our internal or external senses, or the lack of it in Karana Sarira, in deep sleep state. But the senses are there in a causal form, even in that state. And we have already discussed how each of these three states have different states of their own. Like the Jagrat Avastha can be split into Jagrat Shopna, Jagrat Susupti, and Jagrat Turiya. Similarly, each of these stages can be split into in order to have a more detailed understanding, not as a matter of nomenclature, in order to characterize the quality and nature of our consciousness of the self. So, whenever our consciousness is externally oriented and we are getting knowledge from the external realities focused there, that is kind of Jagrat. And then when it moves ultimately to the self, you can call it Jagrat Turiya Avastha. And in each state, similarly in the dream state, when you are there and the dreams are appearing as if real, but you have no self awareness, that is the Jagrata, Swapna Jagrata. And ultimately, that Swapna Turyavastha is one in which you're carrying forward, carrying with you the identification of yourself as a moral being with all your understanding of the Viveka and discrimination. You're carrying it inside your dream. That means you are not bereft of your moral self, rather, you are supremely aware of it. And similarly, you have there is no Turiya. The Turiya Avastha is Turiya Jagrat, Turiya Shopna, and Turiya Susupti, and then you have Turiya Titavastha instead of Turiya. We have already discussed it, and I do not want to repeat it, but broadly, there we centrally what we got to know is what is that state in which a person is able to have a taste of that supreme I consciousness broadly. And the detailed explanations, and so the word that was used is that he's entering into the stage of being a Manthana Bhairava, you know. So he has completely gone beyond all these lower levels of consciousness, and we have had a very good discussion on it. And I now we are going as an introduction to the next stage. The next stage is Kim Asya Mahayoginaha Kasit Tattva Adiroha Pratyasanna Bhumikaha Santi. Now, the question that comes into the mind is a person who becomes that Vireshwara, what is the experience of this yogi? Are there any milestones that he has to cross because you are doing sadhanas? You have in Bhagavad Gita, for example, the Prarambhika sadhakas, the Madhyama sadhakas, and the Uttama sadhakas. Bhagavan mentions four kinds of devotees I have. I have arthas, artharthis, jigyasus, and jnanis. Jnanis are dearest to me because there is no distinction between me and my jnani bhaktas, because we are actually one. There is no distinction. A person who is able to see Sarvam Vasudevamiti. So he is a jnani who is Sudullavaha, not easy to find one. That is what Bhagavan mentioned. Similarly, here, this yogi is in the category of Sambhavapaya, and we'll also interpret this sutra and the other sutra from the standpoint of complete aveda, complete unity, and a bit of unity in diversity. Okay, so bheda bheda in bheda paraka, which is anava upaya, shakta upaya is bheda bheda, and the sambhava upaya, the ultimate method, is of complete non-dualism, complete unity. So we'll also go by the great interpreters of these sutras from the abheda point of view here. Kim asya mahayoginaha kasit तत्वारो तत्व अधिरोह प्रत्यासन्ना भूमिका santi. So there are these 36 tattvas. Now, where is he? Is he beyond these 36 tattvas? Because we have discussed that starting from Prithvi tattva till the ultimate tattva, the person jumps stages by stages in terms of his consciousness. He moves from one stage to the other one. That is what is being discussed here. So, are there certain stations or stages when he's ascending or going up to that reality where you can mention that the tattvas are left behind or they're still around, or what do you make sense of it? Are there any markers? Are there any significant milestones? Therefore, he's saying, look, how do you know? Like, for example, you remember there would be always questions by Arjuna, Sthita Prajnasya Ka Bhasha. How do I recognize somebody who is Sthita Prajna? And different, like for example, Daivi Sampat and Ashuri Sampat in Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavan gives certain markers. How do you recognize that somebody is having abundance of Daivi Sampat in him? Or somebody who has a lot of Asuri Sampat? There are negative and positive qualities. When you see them, you know either he is in Daivi Sampat or he's in Asuri Sampat. Similarly, when in he sort of divided each of these sadhanas, Shraddha Traya Vibhaga Yoga in the 17th chapter, he similarly gave certain signals as to how to figure out how to recognize one, but more important, how to see one's own stage in sadhana. Am I tamasic? Am I rajasic? Or am I sattvic? Or am I going beyond that? Similarly, also in the 18th chapter, he also started categorizing nature of tyaga. Is it sarvakarma sannyasa or only falatyaga? Falatyaga is for the agyanas, for the grihastas, brahmacharis, everyone. But when somebody has finished all this course, he can do sarvakarma sannyasa. This is the mukhya sannyasi. Similarly, here, when the question arises in the minds of the sadhaka about the highest sadhaka, what kind of stages he passes through? Are there any real stages? The singular answer is actually no. There is no more stages in his life. He enters into a stage of unending splendor of, you can call it astonishment, sense of wonder. But remember, the word unending is very important. We do have a sense of wonder when we see a beautiful painting, we listen to a piece of beautiful music, or say for example, you have a lot of prodigies and you have a little child playing piano. Can you imagine? So maybe 2 3 years old boy or girl, and she or he is playing piano like a pro, like a professional, and you're astounded. That's a sense of wonder. You see the sky extremely beautiful, you have a sense of wonder, but these get dominated. But here what we are going to discuss is that when the sadhaka enters into this particular state, and what is the state? Very simple. Before I go into the details, let me tell you the summary. There is a beautiful poem I had read long back. What should I do if I ever meet the Lord? And the answer from the devotee is, most likely I'm going to go mad and get hold of him and not leave him at all. I'll just get hold of him. I'll not let him go. But most likely I would go mad. All these are, in a way, expressive of that supreme sense of wonder which makes all other experiences we have of samsara or even our spiritual sadhana, they pale into insignificance in the face of this sudden upsurge, a sudden exposure to that sense of divine unity with the Lord, if I can put it in very layman's language. So when a person reaches there, and there are a lot of beautiful expressions, like for example in Viveka Chudamani we saw how the student kind of went berserk with his emotions after he got to know what is Atmajnana, even though the Guru is still alerting him. No, no, you have just seen a trailer of it. You have to go and do more sadhana. But he's so happy saying how much punya I may have done that I have this eureka moment. Similarly, in Panchadasi is a beautiful text in the 15th chapter. He's saying Dhanyoham is again and again in one of the chapters, I think in the Brahmananda, or 12th or 13th chapter. He's so overwhelmed by this knowledge of the self that he's saying, oh my God, blessed me, what didn't I experience? What else could I seek? That kind of a sense of wonder he has given expression to through beautiful, poetic couplets. Here, this is sutra. So, very few words, and the whole universe is expressed in a very few words. So he says, Bishmayo Yogo Bhumikaha. So, in a way, the moment he brings in a very mystical expression like Vishmaya, which is a sense of wonder, astonishment, kind of an exposure of something which cannot be described in words, he there and then is clarifying that there are no definite staircase to that state, because we have already discussed it in the sutra Udyama Bhairavaha, that the very state of that enwrapment in the divine consciousness itself is Bhairava. The journey is the destination. That he will have that Bhairavapatti, he will have that state of Bhairavahood, but when he enters into that meditation, that meditation itself is like being Bhairava. We have already mentioned. Now, this is a little more definitive, and he's trying to sort of give hints, and we'll get something about it from the commentaries. First, we'll go into how Kshemaraja in the Siva Sutra Vimarshani has talked about it. But before that, it may be useful that we sort of look at the more easier version, as I was reading the other day. These commentaries, see Acharya Krishnananda Sagara, he has written something. Siva Sutra Ranjini is easier, very simple words. So I'll try to sort of explain it, and then we will go into details of contemplating on the sutra. Yohi Mahayoganishta Purusha Vartate. Now, if there is a Mahayoganishta, the person who has Nishta in a Mahayoga, this particular Shiva Sutra sadhana, Tasya King Tattva Adhirohana Samiva Vartinya, and a person who sort of goes, he'll now, he is able to go to the top, like top of the Everest in the sadhana. That Tattva Adhirohana Samipa Vartinya Kashana Bhumika Vidyante. Are there any particular bhumikas? Like in yoga, you remember, we had different stages which are mentioned, right? And finally, you have that Niruddha Samadhi. Similarly, here, what are these bhumikas? Yavi sat tringshat tattva parishtam sthanam lakshitam bhavet. So you have these 33, 36 tattvas, ultimately going till this, the Prakriti, Mahatattva, all that we have studied, these 24 tattvas, and beyond there are other tattvas that we studied in the first chapter. So I will go there. Sthanam lakshitam bhavet. Vidyante ityaha. Of course it is there. What are these bhumika? Bhishmayo yoga bhumika. No physical details of it. A very cryptic answer saying yes. The foundation, the founding ground of this spiritual, mystical, spiritual experience is called wonder. In one word, he's describing it, and there will be some analysis of what Vishmaya means. यथा कस्यचित् व्यक्ति विशेषस्य अतिशय वस्तु अतिशयवद वस्तु दर्शनी. So you see a dance, but then you see a dance which is superlative, wonderful. You have a sense of wonder. Atisayavad vastu darshane bishmayo bhavati. He gets surprised. There's a sense of wonder. Similarly, tatha eva, then he's saying, idrisasya mahayoginaha, the mahayogi who is like this, who is a vireshwara, that is mentioned in the previous sutra, who is a vireshwara, samanya rupena ahang tattva vishramaneshu atisaya navanava chamatkar paripunna chidgana chidgana swarupa swaswarupa praveshat. There's so many words which I just mentioned. It's like a salad of so many adjectives and nouns. Just look at it. Atisaya, now he's saying Vishmaya Bhavati, how, Tatha eva. Drishtanta is the way a normal person is supremely surprised, gets flabbergasted, he has a sense of wonder, he sees something which is excellent in whatever field that particular thing is, whether it's a painting, it's a golden ornament, it's a book, it's a poem, it's a computer gadget, whatever. His sense of wonder, how is it possible? Similarly, he's saying, Idrisasya Mahayoginaha, the Mahayogi who is like this that we're talking about, Samanya Rupena Aham Tattva Vishramaneshu. And then, any sense of wonder is possible because of what? There are two causes. Either that particular thing overwhelms you, or because you have that aham pratyaya, that you are trying to make sense of it. You are trying to see yourself as different from it, and you're trying to grasp what it is. Atisaya navanava chamatkara. Now, once you get into this particular thing, it's like a wonderland. Okay. The whole thing is to get into it. And once you go there, God's magic is endless. And God's, this whole Leela, whatever you think as a material interplay of forces, once you are in that divine consciousness, new things appear for you which you have never seen. New secrets open up before your eyes, and you just don't know how to make sense of it. And there'll be more discussion of it as we go to the next sutra. But this is a beautiful one because it's very motivational. It sort of tells us what is hiding ahead on the path of sadhana. So he's saying, Navanava Chamatkara Paripurna Chidghana. It's full and complete, and Chidghana is uninterrupted, that eye consciousness. Paripurna Chidghana Swaswarupa Praveshat. And how that happens? Because that fellow is no more a Pashu, he's no more a human being. He's a Vireshwara, he has mastered his senses. He is no more a victim of the phases of consciousness he appears to move through, like Jagrat, Swapna, and Shushupti. All the time he is absorbed in himself or herself. And it's not that consciousness is just I consciousness, undivided from the Shiva consciousness. So he's no more as an individual experiencing any of these. Because we have already discussed that in the previous sutra, that no one on his own actually can master the senses. It's beyond us. It's only when we have that divine connection, it's like a piece of iron behaves like a magnet when electricity passes through it, or a piece of iron behaves like a magnet in a magnetic field, there's induction. Similarly, because of the divine touch, there is a kind of supreme induction which suddenly happens, as a result of which the human consciousness becomes completely divine. The experience of separateness as I, as different from others, as different from this material universe, or the psychological subjective universe which I experience, this difference evaporates, vanishes, collapses. And then what remains is that pure consciousness, what is marked by a sense, an experience of wonder. It's marked by a sense of wonder, not figuratively, but it's basically trying to describe what a wonderful state that is to be in. And therefore he's saying Mahayoginaha Samanya Rupena Aham Tattva Vishramaneshu Atisaya Navanava Chamatkara Paripunna Chidghana Swaswarupa Pravesat. As a result of assuming your own pure nature, Swarupa Praveshat. What is this Swarupa? What is our Swarupa? That Shiva, Paramashiva Tattva. And you have entered into it. That means you have come out of the limitations of consciousness associated with identification with the body, identification with the mind, identification with the emotions, or the external objectives that we seem to all the time engage with during our waking, dream, and deep sleep state. That is what is mentioning here. Therefore, he is saying, Praveshat, Karana Chakra Dwara Mahan Vishmuyo Jayate. And therefore, because so these senses that he has, he experiences uh, Mahan Vishmaya. That is what is Mishmi. Tadyuktam Yogi. So, Yadyuktam Yogi Swatanda Yogena. So there is a Swachanda Tantra. There is one verse there. Yogi Swatanda Yogena Swachanda Gaticharina Sa Swachanda Pade Yuktaha Swachanda Samatam Brajet. That yogi, that particular sadhaka, Swachanda Yogena, because he is no more limited by anything and he is in that pure consciousness. Swachanda Gaticharina, and he is in that path of complete liberation, complete Swatantra. And therefore, Swachanda Pade Yuktaha, and he is connected with the Paramashiva consciousness. Swachanda Samatam Braja, he is no more different. He is no more different from that supreme consciousness. First, it's a path. In the beginning, it's a destination. Now, look at this beauty of it, which is also there in the Bible, where Jesus says that I am the path, I am the way, I am the destination. So, in the beginning, that Paramashiva Tattva is like a destination to reach, and then that becomes the path. And then there is no distinction between that Paramashiva Tattva and the person, the journeyman. So the sadhaka himself attains that supreme consciousness in this process. And then there is another particular verse from where Vijnana Bhairava also he sort of is quoting to explain this particular thing. Tathacha Vijnana Bhairave. In the Vijnana Bhairava Tantra, there is another verse he's quoting, that is 108. Jalasyeva urmayaha banhe jala bhangyo yatharvehe mamesha bhairavasyeta vishwabhangyo vinirgataha. So, like for example, can you distinguish between the tiny waves in the ocean or in the water? We cannot imagine, I mean, that's very Vedantic. We cannot imagine of waves without accepting water. Water is the fundamental reality. Waves are an appearance. So there is actually a bheda between jala and taranga. Similarly, heat and fire. We cannot separate heat from fire. Similarly, these rays of light or heat from the sun. The sun and sun rays cannot be separated. It's not possible. Mameva Bhairava Setaha. And then he's saying that particular thing who is established in that Bhairava Esha, Vishwabhangyo Vinirgataha. And that in that supreme state, I tell you, I mean, that will be mentioned in the next verse, how his Ichha Sakti becomes very supreme. And there are three ways to make sense of it. At one stage, when there is a division still in the consciousness, his only goal is to unite with Lord Shiva. Then at the next level, he sees the desire, that supreme spiritual desire he has. He's identifying with that Chit Shakti of Lord Shiva, Uma, where just imagine it creates separation. At the same time, it's not separate from Lord Shiva. The Sakti, that Parashakti, it is non-different from Lord Shiva, which creates samsara, which appears as different from Lord Shiva. So there is unity and separation at the same time in that principle. And ultimately, there is nothing but just complete aveda with Lord Shiva. That intention or the desire or whatever you're thinking about, that supreme power, that energy, there's a complete non-distinction and non-separation between the pure consciousness and whatever movement, dynamism, desire, intention, whatever you attribute to it, is absolutely part of that pure consciousness. When it becomes Bahir Unamukha, we call it Shakti and it assumes different names and forms. But in that supreme state of unity, it's just one and the same thing. That is what is being discussed here. Ittam Niravachinna Ananda Swatmani Aparitruptatvena. And this particular sense of wonder that the sadhaka experiences when he is in that state, in Niravachinna Ananda. What is Niravachinna? We always have a Savachinna Ananda. Savachinna means with a few, it's kind of encircled by time and space. We are very happy you listen to a song. Yeah, but it's on a timeline, it's for a few seconds, can be for a few hours also. It's a very beautiful song. Listen to it, you listen to it few times. Slowly it'll, the excitement dips. There are a great lot of favorite songs. You like to play them while driving, or you have a long drive or a journey, you put on the headphone, listen to them. But if I ask you to listen to them continuously, you'll get angry. You won't be able to do that. Repetition breeds a sense of boredom. Not so with this state. That's why he's saying Navanama Chamatkara. Every moment is a moment of new sense of wonder, because because that infinitude of that consciousness that you are uniting with ever makes and keeps you supremely elated and excited in that state of well-being. There are in the lives of different yogis we have seen that they go to these mahabhavas and they stay there for a few moments and stuff like that, and they return to sansara. That is what happened with Thakur Ramakrishna Paramahamsa used to get into these mahabhavas. And there are many other sadhus who have gone into sadhu, but for Leela, they come back to interact with others. And if they don't return, they actually don't return. They leave that body and they move forward because there's no return from that ultimate state. What he's mentioning here is that eta bhumikaha, then paratatvika samandhinyaha santi. There are two aspects to it. Aparitriptatvena. You want more of it. You want to have a rasgulla, you can have four, you can have five. After that, you'll vomit. Not so with the experience of the divine beatitude, that particular sense of divine unity, harmony, that trance you are in. It's not temporary. You crave for more. That is the whole thing. It's not that, okay, I have seen this place, now I can return. No, you will not like to return from there because you want to have more and more of it. You want to see more of it. And therefore he's saying, aparitriptatvena pauna punyena asaryaya manatvam bhavati. It again and again creates a sense of wonder. So you want to return to that state again and again. Even though you may come back, you want to go back and be in that state. Etaha bhumikaha paratatveka samandhinyah sati. The person who is already connected with that paratattva, aikya samandhinyah, that consciousness should be in constant touch with, should be entwined with, it should be no different from that unity consciousness. Like in Vedanta, we say Tattvamasi. You are that supreme. Of course, you are Jiva. By Tat, I refer to the Ishvara. But no, I'm not talking about Ishvara. I'm talking about that Mayavachinna Chaitanya is Ishvara. Okay, what about that Nirupadhika Chaitanya is pure consciousness. So you also have that Chidabhasa, that Antakarana and Chidabhasa, all these things in you, you are a Jiva, which you have Alpajnatva, then Kinchit Vidyamanatva, Kinchit Kala Sthaitva, all that limitations you have. But what happens when you are entering into a deep state of meditation? In a deep state of meditation, the pure consciousness that you are and the pure consciousness that Ishvara is, there's no distinction. That is what he is also referring to here. Paratatveka sambandhinyah santi. Tat krama adhyaroha paravishranti suchikaha parichinna bhumayah. So, till then, when you're talking about this limited consciousness, all these stages, which are there for a while or something, these are much inferior and they actually come to an end. Now there are no steps to climb. You have reached the pinnacle of your supreme union with the Supreme Self, Paramashiva. न तो मूलाधार भूमध्यस्थ भूमध्य स्थानादि anubhava vritteh santi. So, what is this muladhara? There is a particular verse in the Siva Sutra Vimarshini. We'll have a look at it in the commentary of Kshemaraja mentions. He's saying this particular state is no more associated with, like for example, you are to begin with, you meditate on the Muladhara chakra, which is there at the bottom of the spinal cord, somewhere around the anus, between anus and above, that particular Muladhara chakra you have, that basic chakra. So when you meditate on it and you generate some energies and all, then you have some sensations and some experiences. You go up, then you go to the Swadhisthana, then you go to the Manipura, and you go to Anahata, and then after Anahata, you go to the Vishuddha chakra in the throat, then you go to the Ajna chakra. But the Ajna chakra also gives you a lot of phenomenal experience of unity. But that's not the ultimate thing until you reach that Sahasrara, when there is absolutely limitless bliss. So he's saying all other limited bhumikas like these Agyan Chakra or Muladhara Chakra, this particular state or Vishmaya Vasta, Vishmaya Yoga Bhumikaha, when Shastra says this, it is not referring to any limited experience of divinity and powers associated with it, what you have heard or read about in other yoga books like in Kundalini Yoga or Patanjali Yoga Sutra, etc. We are talking about a very high state. Like, for example, in Patanjali Yoga Sutra, you remember we had about that Tatta Dharma Megha Samadhi. There's a kind of a blossoming of certain spiritual powers in you, and you are bestowed with higher, certain siddhis, and they just the devatas come begging, begging for an opportunity to bless you with a lot of siddhis. They don't want you to go further ahead, so they hold you back, and they want to, shower a lot of blessings and powers on you. But the real yogi doesn't stop there, he moves forward. Similarly, he's saying no, not of these lower levels of. Therefore, he's saying atma chevatmana jnato yada bhavati sadhakehi atma cha eva atmana jnato. The same language is in Vedanta or in Bhagavad Gita. When with a pure mind you are able to experience the pure self, then what happens? Here, the pure mind means a mind which has washed away all its purva bad sanskaras or pratibandhakas. They have been removed through a lot of sadhanas, and therefore there are no hurdles, there are no obstructions, and the sadhaka is ready to sort of embark upon a higher level of journey. And then that leads to complete unity with himself. Atma sevatmana jnato yada bhavati sadhakehi. By the sadhaka, when this particular unity takes place, then what happens? Tada vismayam atmave atmanyeva prapashyati. This Vishmaya he doesn't see outside of himself. By saying this, what is he ruling out? This is not a product of visiting any famous Shiva temple, any mountaintop, or having a kutia by the riverside in a beautiful natural setting. No. This state, this sense of wonder is not a product of, is not caused by Vishaya Sansarga of the external Bahya Indriyas or any particular internal object that you, or purva sanskara, that you remember. You are given a big trophy because you are a great debater, or you had scored a century as a child. That was the best day of your life. No, it is not referring to those things. It's saying that state where atma chevatmana jnato yada bhavati sadhakehi. When this particular state happens, the sense of wonder you experience, you don't experience in your senses or with a perspective on the external reality. or the mental reality or an emotional event or anything. He's saying tada bismaya bismayam atmavi. In that sense of wonder is verily what you are. That's your swarupa pravesha. Atmanyeva prabhashyati. He experiences it within himself. Atmanyeva. Of course, you can say, is in Advaita Vedanta say that all the laboratory for all our sadhana is Vijnanamaya Kosha. Having said that Atma is Pancha Koshatita, all sadhanas take place in the Vijnanamaya Kosha because that is the state in which we do a lot of vichara. And beyond Vijnanamaya Kosha, you enter into the dream state. Beyond that, what? You sort of getting into the dream state. And then you get into deep sleep, the Anandamaya Kosha, Karana Sarira. So Vijnanamaya Kosha is the ultimate. So far sadhana kala is concerned, there is where is the laboratory of our consciousness to explore to. Then he's saying, you can say atmanyeva prapashyati. In a very imperfect way, you can say that all these experiences happen in the Vijnanamaya Kosha. In the initial stages of sadhana, ultimate stage, he is going beyond the koshas. He is in that perfect state of bliss. And therefore, there alone, he's saying that means it is not dependent on whether he has a wonderful room to live in, he has certain material comforts, or he doesn't have. Absolutely, there is no need for this. These things can come and go when that person is fully and deeply established in himself. Then he's saying, Tathacha ahur acharya basu gupta padaha. So, what he's saying something very interesting. Tam adhishtatri bhavena. That that will come in the Siva Sutra Vimarshini. So swabhavam avalokayan. Okay, swabhava praveshat, it was mentioned. He enters into his pure nature, and therefore he is experiencing. It's not because he's connecting with beautiful object of a music, or it could be a picture, it could be a performance, it could be a great book, or maybe a lot of money. No, not these things. Something which is deeply within, that's what he's mentioning. Swabhavam abalokayan. Therefore, he says, Mayamanaha iva aste. There's a famous book. You can also find that there are a lot of swamis. They can kind of crazy people. They keep smiling. Smayamana iva aste, as if in a state of uninterrupted smile, state of peace. The best closest to it that you can see is Buddha smile. He's in a state of the smiling Buddha, not the Chinese smiling Buddha, but this Buddha who is meditating with his eyes half open, is recognizing your presence, and is telling you that all the crap you have filled inside yourself is the cause of your anxiety. If you can return to the purity of consciousness, mind is the devil that is troubling you. Abandon the mind and you're free. So that sort of comes very closest to it. Buddha smile. Smayamana iva aste yaha tasyam kusrutihi kutaha. Then he cannot at all go to any wrong path. Like Bhagavad Gita saying, if he kills even a human being, the jnani can be forgiven. But he also clarifies that he's a Bidhyatma. A person who has done so much of hard work and he has reached that supreme state, is he going to commit any low level moral error of judgment? It's not possible for him. He can abandon his body. He cannot commit an error of judgment, moral judgment. In that stage, he becomes Vidhyatma. His mind, by its very nature, by its very inclination, is always oriented towards taking a morally correct position, even though he's beyond all morality and immorality, because morality and immorality are relevant for only him or her who is seeing dualities in samsara. Me and another person, I have to be good to the other person. The Vedanti, in the Jnana state, he becomes somebody who is Sarva Bhuta Hite Rataha. He has Sarva Abhaya Pradayaka. He absolutely has no dvesa towards anyone because he's no more abiding in his, emotional seats or in his intellectual seat. He has gone beyond that. Similarly, he's writing, how can ever this fellow be anywhere other than in that state of bliss, that aparichinna ananda, chidgana swarupa? All the time he's in that state. So this particular shloka, in a certain way, is kind of introducing us to the ultimate destination. And then we are struggling at a lower plane. It's fine. But the beauty of this shloka is that, and when we now will go into the commentary of, the Siva Sutra Vimarshini by Kshemaraja, and let's look at it. What he's saying, yatha satisaya vastu darsane, same thing as this guy has written. In satisaya vastu darsane kasyachid vishmayo bhavati. Satisaya means what? Any particular objective thing that you see which is beautiful. Tatha asya mahayoginaha nityam tattad vidya abhavhasa amarsa avhogeshu. So he is now talking about the supreme yogi Tattad Vedya, because he is talking about the Nitya Padartha, and he has these Nitya wonders which are not limited by time and location. And because of that, then Nisamanya Atisaya Navanava Chamatkara Chidgana Swatma Avesha Vasat. He is saying Swarupa Praveshat. He had mentioned that language. He is saying Swatma Avesha Vasat. More or less the same thing. Swa Atmani Avesha. He is fully lost in himself, in that Swarupa. He's wherever he is completely lost in the Swarupa Chintana, because that Avesha Vasat, Smera Smera, that Vikasita, Stimita Vikasita, Samasta Karana Chakrasya. So you have all the Karana Chakra, all the senses that you have, using whether it's your Granendriya or Darsanendriya, whatever, or your mind or whatever, Yo Vishmaya Anavachinna Anande Swatmani. That Anavachinna Ananda, that Vishmaya, that sense of wonder, Swatmani. Aparitriptatvena, both are writing the same thing. Actually, he has taken from here. Aparitriptatvena Muhuru Muhu Asarya आश्चर्याय मानता ता एव योगस्य परतत्व ऐक्यस्य संबंधिन्योः भूमिका. He has taken the whole sentence from here there, and we have already discussed it. He, in that supreme state where he has this insatiable desire for a greater appreciation of, greater experience of that divine truth, and he is having muhur muhu again and again, is experiencing a sense of wonder, because it's kind of self-renewing sense of wonder. Tad adhyaroha vishranti suchikaha parimita bhumayaha. The limited bhumis that we are talking about are kind of inferior to them. Natu kanda bindwadi anubhava vrittayaha. And he's saying that, look, these states is after all these limited experiences have happened. That's an unlimited state of unlimited bliss, not like Kanda and Vindu. Kanda is Muladhara, because you have these roots, right? The sweet potatoes, for example, Kanda. So they are actually below the ground. So Kanda here refers to the Muladhara, Bindu refers to the Agnya Chakra. Kanda Vindwadi Anubhava Vrittayaha. So they establish in the Muladhara, Kanda Vritti, or the Bindu Vritti when you are established in the Agnya Chakra. Any of these, even though they might look very unlimited from the point of view of a common man who has no entry into yoga, the person who is in this supreme state, for him, they pale into insignificance. Satuktam sti kula yuktau. That already I have read. Atma cheva atmana gyato yada bhavati sadhakahi tada vismaya atmave atmanyeva prapashyati iti cha. Then that also we just mentioned, that Abhinava Gupta thing, just we have mentioned. Tam adhishtatri bhavena. Remember, that is the most important thing. When you are meditating on sense of wonder because of an external object, remember that Vishmaya is visiting you and it's limited. So it's outside of you. Here, the kind of wonder that you're experiencing, it is not an objective experience. It is verily you, remember. And it's emerging out of you. It's not as something external object you are chasing, like a fixed deposit or like a house and a car or anything. No, it's not outside of you. This is your Swarupa, and you there, Adhishtatritvena. Then Smayamana ivaste Yaha Tasya yang kusruti kritaha. So kusruti means that where can you go to a lower level path? Absolutely nothing. So you are in that ever new delight at chamatkara of I consciousness, and it sort of abounds in you, blossoms in you, okay, and in the experience of several beautiful objects of perception. If you talk to any simple yoga sadhaka, or if you do regular meditation, okay, for a few days, if you do it regularly, it's quite possible that you may, while in meditation or early morning, sometimes you listen to temple bells. They're no temple bell actually. You just hear it within yourself. You might experience divine fragrance. You might think, "Koi agarbatti lagaya, koi agarbatti nahi lagaya." You are experiencing it, independent of any object giving you that scent. You will just experience it. Many these things happen, but then people don't pursue it. So these kind of siddhis come and go. They visit the sadhak for a while and they go away. A lot of things happen. And and if you talk to and if you have a guru who sort of gives you guidance, and when you get super excited about it, he discourages you. Said, where are you lost? No, no, these are not very interesting things. And then you have some visions and stuff like that. He discourages you. He knows that these can be very enchanting, but they will limit your growth and your progress. But these are certain signs, and Bhagwan throws you, a few cookies. He'll throw at you to attract your attention, because he says it is in the Bible. Say, for example, you come one step, I go 10 steps or something. So he's always always compassionate, always kind. So when we do, a few cookies come our way, and then you've become full of yourself, and then these beautiful siddhis and experiences abandon you. There is a beautiful saying in Buddhism, in the science of their meditation. They say that when you reach here and you are able to quieten your mind, the beautiful peacock shall begin to dance. Okay. What happens is trying to say is that when you reach this stage of meditation, I mean, if you do meditation for a few days, that you can also experience. So the beautiful peacock begins to dance. The moment you lose that moment, the peacock vanishes. And what dances? No, you listen to the AC, you listen to the fan, you feel your body, you come back, you immediately come to the Annamaya Kosha. So again, your senses and everything, they become externally oriented. So the magic happens when we completely disconnect ourselves from the external world and also the internal world, because the internal world is a world of past impressions and a few hidden desires and a few vasanas, equally limiting. When we abandon both and we establish ourselves in that pure consciousness, in that pure attention without any thoughts, that Shivahood in the language here, because different parts will speak about the same truth in different ways, remember. It's the language is only different. In a certain times I think like that this whole beautiful garden of spirituality, the flowers have different names, but garden is one. All these flowers have different names because different paths you follow, and they have a different fragrance, but broadly you are in the same domain. So he's saying that this fascinating wonder then happens, and there are different stages, but these stages are not like mechanical. There's not a mechanical staircase. It's all sort of gets activated because of your communication with that highest truth or reality called the Paramashiva Tattva. And so there are two ways to look at it. These are kind of signature points to see how you are ascending forward, or you can say that sense of wonder sort of evolves and deepens. Okay, that is what he's saying. But it's nothing to compare with the Muladhara Chakra or Agnya Chakra or anything. That is what he's saying. Then he further says that um, uh, that's all he says here. There are a couple of other texts, another book, a little time is still left, and I'll just try to sort of look at a few more interesting comments made by other great scholars. So this particular verse, Atma chevatmana jnato yada bhavati sadhakaihi tada vismayam atmave atmanyeva prapashyati. It is Sri Kulayukti. That is what is the sort of thing is that is from taken from here. Now, the Siva Sutra Vartikakara has a slightly different interpretation of it. Unlike Kshemaraja, who says that this Vishmaya is essentially not because of any self effort, but because of your union with that Paramashiva Tattva. You have already become a Bireshwara, and there is an unending process of repeated epiphanies, repeated grand feelings of trance. Okay, all these things happen. But Varadaraja is a little more constructive, keeping in mind a mid-level sadhakas, then he's saying something, but it's very beautiful what he says. He gives a very simplistic and yet very detailed and helpful interpretation. Yatha sati sayanande kasyachit vishmayo bhavet. That we have read. That is Shiva Sutra Vartikakara. Tathasya yoginam nityam tattad vedyapalokane. Tattad vedya. Because all these nitya tattvas are there, and then you have avalokana, you have that direct experience of these truths. The way in a limited sense in the external world you do experience sense of wonder, similarly within yourself when you are being able to experience, see, touch, feel, or perceive, not in a sensual way, perceive, see, experience these nitya aspects, grand aspects, different facets, different appearances, different manifestations in the subtle world of that divine ultimate truth. I tell you, all these words are blabbering. I tell you why. Because that state, to my mind, can never be captured in a very definite way of describing it with the help of language. We're talking about that reality which is Avanga Manashogochara. And the experiences of these yogis and the mystics. And when you do some meditation, you will know that even if you are writing in a journal something, if you look at the diaries of Krishnamurti and Satnada, like Gopi Krishna, he has mentioned he saw a light outside himself. And Krishnamurti talks about how suddenly he will have certain splendid experiences while sitting at the backside of a car which is going on a highway in states. All these people have mentioned, but if you look at your own mind, when you go through these processes, you will not be able to capture them in words exactly. You might write something, and people may imagine that you have experienced something, but what you have experienced and what other people will imagine as a result of reading what you have written perhaps will be vastly different, because these things are very, very mystic and very personal, very unique to the sadhaka. Then he's saying Nisamanya Parananda Anubhutihi Stimito Indriye Pare Swatmani Atruptyava Yad Asaryam Sa Vishmayaha. So he's defining what is Vishmaya, that it is Nisamanya, it's not a simple sex experience, sense experience. And all the indriyas have kind of withdrawn, they are not relevant. And para, it's that swa atmani atriptyeva. So you are never satisfied. Yad asharyam, that astonishment, that sense of wonder, that is called Vishmaya. That which surprises you within you, not with the help of your senses, it's not outside. That is what is called Vishmaya. Then he says, Sa eva khalu yogasya paratattvika rupinaha. That Vishmaya is paratattva aichya rupa. That how do you describe it? As non-difference from that ultimate pure consciousness, I consciousness. Bhumikaha tatra kramaroha paravishranti shuchikaha. So you say that whatever, that is that ultimate level. When you've reached, then these are no stakes anymore. And we have also in Bhagavad Gita and in Upanishad There are different places where different statements are mentioned. To pick up a few, Savanayapi Vahurvir Yona Labhyaha, that Atma in Kathopanishad. Sunvantopi Vahavaha Yangna Viduhu. You hear a lot from Upanishads. Do you get what is that Atma Tattva? And Savanayapi, and you hear a lot. Bahuvir Yona Labhyaha. Asyurya Vakta Kusolosya Labdha. That you know, it's a question of wonder, the person who talks about it. Why? Once a person has Atmagyana, who he will talk to, what he will talk about. Because once you are one, there is no duality. But then he's still speaking because of Loka Sangraha. Kusolosya Labdha. And the person who has realized it, he's very learned and he's very skillful to be able to, sort of grasp it, to understand it. Ashurya Gyata, Kusala Nusishtaha. And the person who knows this is also a sense of wonder. It's something very difficult to describe. And he's saying also very skillful is the one who has an opportunity to listen to this kind of a particular teacher. So all that, and then Kena Upanishad also, we have several places where this particular thing is mentioned again and again. So broadly speaking, broadly speaking, one thing is being mentioned here, that ultimately that Sachidananda Swarupa, as we mentioned in the Advaita Vedanta or in the Shiva Sutras, as they mention, that you have this Bhumika, Vishmayo, Yoga Bhumikaha, they are all pointing at that state of supreme unity with the supreme truth, which would unfold in us. It'll break the shackles, and then we are free from the chains which hold us back from experiencing this particular divinity. With that, I'll stop. And if you have any questions, one or two, we have time. We can take up for discussion. Any doubts?
I have a clarification question. So,
Yeah.
you said that one of the ways in which this Vishmay, that you can separate it from the other kinds of Vishmay is if the origin for it is in the body or the mind, right? So, if your physical sensation or you're remembering something pleasant, then this is not it, right? But
No.
he also said that another way which is different is from Purva Samskar. Like, can you explain that? Like, how do you get this kind of bliss from Purva Samskar, which is different from this Vishwamaya?
You what I'm saying is when you are in this state of Vishmaya, it's not ruled out that you may have certain physical sensations. Actually, physical sensations may be there. Okay, this is same. I'm talking about very practical aspect of it, that if you do Kundalini yoga, you are doing meditations, and suddenly your body may become unstable with vibrations, powerful vibrations. And that is why a lot of gurus insist that you sort of do few of this meditation with the help of some people who may be around, because your body may tremble and stuff like that. And the Padmasana is kind of advice so that you will not fall down, you will not hit your head on the ground or something, because the Padmasana, your body will slowly decline, and it will not hit against the, and then you shouldn't stand and do it or something, you may fall and hurt yourself. Then number two, you will definitely have physical sensations, like your hair may stand on the, and then whatever you experience when you see a horror movie or something very surprising, those kinds of things will happen to you. I'm not ruling those out. What I was trying to say is, because of certain physical stimulation or emotional stimulation or any external object or any internal object which can have as its source any memory or any emotional imagination of something, a grand imagination. Uh, that can also give you some sense of delight, but that is different from that Vishmaya. That is how I was trying to separate. So I was saying that just imagine that you had certain good, pleasant experiences. Okay, how do I put it? Let's imagine that you are doing meditations or you are doing something, and then you're doing some meditation, or okay, you are going and talking. We made a good friend. Okay, all of us have left youth behind. So during that particular period, what happens to young boys and girls? So they had a wonderful friend some time back. Mm. I have had certain experience with some of my friends who have gone into miserable states because of these purva sanskaras. So once there was a friend of mine who sort of identified a girl as a girl he was in love with 15 years back, and that was a different human being. And then he was overwhelmed with emotions, and he messed it up by approaching that girl, saying that you remind me of my old friend or something. It was quite a big embarrassment. These things do happen. You are meditating, and then you suddenly make some spiritual progress. You had discontinued your meditation for 10 years. Then you are happening, and suddenly you think, oh my God, it's all coming back. I'm going to get it. So it's not actually the spiritual experience which is creating Vishmaya, but some kind of a sanskara, and it is powerful, and you are anticipating a sweet experience. You are anticipating ascendance on the spiritual plane.